Hey, good evening. Hi, this is Rod Ashley, and thanks for joining us for Faith Talk. I'm the pastor at Snohomish Faith Church, and we're glad that you can be with us tonight. We're going to talk about boundaries and hopefully healthy boundaries, but establishing some or re-looking at some others. But if you're here with us tonight, we're glad that you have joined us, and you can certainly ask a question. We'd love for you to comment and like us and follow us and do all those kinds of things as well. But if you want to participate, that'd be great. And we would love to be able to answer any particular question that you have, especially if it's in this along the subject of boundaries. So, uh, yeah, and so thanks, Pam, for joining. And you're always first in line. Appreciate that. That's glad that you're here. So boundaries. Um, a lot of times we have boundaries and they're pretty well set. There are other times where our boundaries are fairly wishy-washy kind of or not as firmly set, and we have to always kind of do a reevaluation of what is good and what's healthy, especially in our relationship with God and the things that we're allowing into our lives, the things that we're protecting, the things that we're guarding. And sometimes we need to reevaluate and see what's going on. In our property here in around the church, there have been times where we've had to have the surveys made in order to confirm our boundary for our property, so that we're not slipping over into the neighbors or vice versa, and just to confirm what is ours and what isn't. And those are probably helpful things for us to think about in terms of our own personal life as well as in our spiritual life. What are healthy boundaries? What are good ones for us to have? Because it's easy to slide into bad habits because you haven't erected good boundaries. I'm a father and a grandfather, and I love my family, and I have two girls, and I have two granddaughters. And the thing is that they all have me around their little finger in terms of all they have to do is ask dad or ask grandpa, and I my boundaries are not so well firm when it comes to them. I'm inclined to kind of go in their direction. And some boundaries don't matter so much, but other ones are really important, especially in terms of our home, our family, our spiritual life, our devotion to God. Those are things that we need to think about. And then just the way that we interact with others around us. So I just wanted to throw some ideas out your way that maybe would be helpful for you in terms of making good boundaries and just kind of evaluating, are they in good shape? Are they something that maybe you need to think about and maybe kind of consider? Because we all have to kind of shore things up every now and then in different places and different circumstances. And here's another thing: when you've gone through like some major trauma, whether it be really positive or really negative, sometimes those events kind of shift our boundaries, and we want to make sure that they are properly set and that they're in good place, so that like I said, things don't slide in a negative way that would impact you. Um, sometimes they can, bad, boundaries can let the bad stay in and not let the good come in, and vice versa. So we want to be careful about what you have established. So wherever you're looking at, whatever you're thinking about, places that you're going, people that you're hanging out with, your thought life, the things that you're reading, where the way that your mind is dealing with stuff on a daily basis, what you're allowing to flood yourself with. All those things have things to do with boundaries. And so think about whether it has to do with your health or whether it has to do with your spiritual life, what you're reading, what you're portraying, who's influencing you. We have to establish some boundaries that are there, because poorly defined boundaries can keep God at a distance from us and can let bad things in. What I mean by that? Well, there are times where people say, yeah, I love God, I just don't have any time to read my Bible. And then, how many hours are we on Facebook or Instagram, or, where we waste hours, but we don't have time to grow in our relationship with God, to pray or to read or to go to church, because we're so busy doing something else. Well, those are bad boundaries. Those are improper boundaries. And, the scripture tells us that bad company corrupts good character. So who are you hanging out with? It's one thing to be with people because you want to impact them and influence them for Christ. But if the reverse is happening in terms of that they are influencing you in a negative manner, you need to think about that. I remember one time I was way back when Lori and I were first married, and we uh, were very involved in our small town school, and we had gone to a basketball game, and I was pretty involved in sports at that time. And I remember that I was being really adamant for our team, just really cheering for them, and just giving the ref a bad time at the basketball game, and just really growling at him. And I turned around, and this is back in the day when people didn't have cell phones, but they had those big Herkin, you know, VHS recording things that were going on, and they were pointing at me, and I went, "Oh man, here they are recording me." And thank God we didn't have the internet back then, but it stopped me to realize that, hey, that I don't want that to be my reputation. I don't want that to be the thing that gets out. And it caused me to reconsider my boundaries. And I determined at that point, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to act this way, behave this way anymore, because that's not who I want to be perceived as, and that's not who I wanted to be when I would go to a game or when I go out in the community. I wanted to portray a different image of who God is at work in me. So it wasn't that I became perfect overnight, because I'm still not, but the idea was that I'm not going to go down in that direction. And so there are little things that we can do to establish boundaries that are helpful for us, and helpful for people around us as well. So I wanted to be someone that you'd want to sit next to at a basketball game, not that guy. I don't want to be close to that guy. So it was something that stayed with me and impacted my life in many ways. And the other thing, and I think I alluded to it at first, is just this idea is that sometimes when we get hurt, we make bad decisions because we haven't established boundaries in certain areas. And if they're not established, if they're not determined, we can tend to do things that maybe we shouldn't or wouldn't do under normal circumstances because boundaries aren't there. So just think of it as, fence line, that within these fence lines, I'm going to act this way, behave this way. So in my finances, I've got boundaries in my finances. I'm going to spend so much money. I'm going to save so much money. I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to do that. And that those are helpful things in our lives, and that we need to have those things. Same way within marriage. I'm going to protect my marriage by where I go during work, who I hang out with, the way that I conduct myself, the way I speak to people. In terms of my language, I'm not going to be hypersexual with anybody. That might get the wrong idea. I'm going to protect my marriage in every way possible, and protect my home and protect my family, because temptation's out there, and it's really easy for you to cross over a line in terms of relationships and being too flirty or whatever, that kind of thing might happen. So those are some boundaries that you might think about. In parenting, you have to make up some decisions about how am I going to parent my children? What things will we allow? What things won't we allow? Who will be the influencers in my kids' lives? What things will we not allow them to be a part of or to participate in? And so, the phones opens up the world to people in ways and in places we never ever imagined could happen and influence. And so we have to really kind of be careful about what kind of things we're allowing our kids to watch, where they're going with that phone, and how they're communicating and how they're texting and chatting with people in different places. So you got to set up those boundaries and those parameters. And then just in relationships with others, you have your work relationship, you have your personal relationships. You got to establish, again, some boundaries there in terms of how many hours are you going to work during a day, during a week. Some cases, for some seasons, those things kind of get shifted and shaped. But for the most part, do you live to work, or do you work so that you can live? And there's some balance there, and trying to find the balance in those places. And again, relationships, don't don't invest in so many things that your kids or your spouse never knows you. So developing again those some of those healthy relationship things. So those are just some basic things that I've learned over the years and things that I've experienced in talking with people and hanging out with folks and seeing success stories, as well as seeing some stories that were not so successful, um, and trying to encourage people to make good and healthy choices, or maybe better choices, and to obviously bring God into all of those choices, so that we could participate and with God in terms of following His guidance and His direction. And God's Word gives a lot of guidance in terms of how to establish healthy boundaries. So you want to look for those parameters, and so those things that will benefit your life personally and benefit your family's life. So if you have a spouse, that would be a great thing to have a conversation about. Where are we going? What do we want our home, our life to look like? Where are those boundaries? And those are some things that probably, for most people, that they establish as they're doing some pre-marriage counseling. Or if you've been married for any length of time, you probably have had these conversations many times over. But it's always good to revisit that and, maybe read some books, get some good information, watch some YouTube videos on people on what things to look out for, some new opportunities, some new challenges, some new things that might enable you or strengthen you in certain areas. That kind of makes those boundaries a little bit more secure, and you're a little bit more confident that you feel like God's in it all. So those are some really helpful things. It's interesting that we need to take responsibility of our boundaries, but we also need to recognize that there are some things that are not our responsibility. That's in somebody else's world. That's within someone else's responsibilities. Lori, my wife, she heard a saying a while back, and we've kind of played with it off and on. But in terms of that, when someone wants us to get involved in something and get really riled up about something, and the expression is this: it's not my circus. Those aren't my monkeys. That idea that's your thing. That's not mine. I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to be engaged in that. That's in your realm. And so being able to recognize that, even though someone may have this, oh, you got to help me, you got to do this, that may not be what I have to do. And as a pastor and as a friend, there are times where I can get involved and I can help people, and that's part of my role as my job and what I do, and plus it's kind of what I want to be as a friend. But there are other times where I have to say, that's really not my thing. I really don't have any impact or influence in that area. That's going to have to be something that you can do, and that's sometimes hard to do especially if you're inclined to you want to help somebody. But one of the things that we've realized over the years is that if we don't have healthy boundaries, it's easy to burn out, and it's easy to become bitter and frustrated and upset, and to where you don't like people. You don't want people to call. You don't want people to email you. You don't, and so when you have healthy boundaries, it prevents burnout. It prevents people from going off the edge. And so those are some things that I just want to throw your way. And so, this has just been more ideas, I guess, tonight more than anything else. But just the idea that healthy boundaries are things that are worked at. They don't just kind of happen. They are formulated. They are planned. They are worked upon, refined. And so if you are in need of establishing boundaries, it's got to be you. One of the things we've discovered is I can't make anybody do anything they don't want to. And so if you want to have healthy boundaries, that you have to be the instigator. You have to be the driver of that to make that happen. And I believe that's where God really comes in, because God becomes the one who helps us and enables us to do things that are hard, things that maybe are not natural for us, but things that are beneficial for us in the long way. And so we've got some great resources. If you're interested in them, just you reach out to us, make a comment, or email us at info@snahomishfaith.com, and we'll get back to you about that. But anyway, hope that you will be working on developing some healthy boundaries. And again, if you are watching this after the fact, you can reach out to us, leave a comment, and we will respond and get back to you. And anyway, I hope that you are good at making some good, healthy boundaries and even just thinking about it so that you are making good progress in the days ahead. We'll talk to you later. You hope you have your great week, rest of the week, and a great night. And take care. Bye.